This episode of Steve's Outdoor Adventures was brought to you by the Adventure Armory. Rifle, scope, and ammo packages for hunters. 2 weeks ago, you got to see Cooper Mishu kill a big 6x6 bull. And last week, Amber Mozingo shot the 7x7 bull that we called Picket Fence. And this week, we're gonna complete the Camo Dreams trifecta. We're headed down to Utah to meet up with Derek Fussell, the founder of Camo Dreams, and the star of this week's show, Teddy Muir.
Oh man, it's cold out here. We're gonna run up to the main lodge where Teddy and his dad are staying with Derek. Today ought to be an amazing day.
We rolled up to the main lodge and I saw my good friend Lonnie cooking breakfast and chatted up Teddy and his dad Kyle. And our outfitter Daniel Richens showed up a few minutes later and we were out the door, loaded into the truck and headed up the mountain. Teddy is 14 years old. He's been battling brain tumors. And after all the surgeries and chemotherapy, he's been cleared to come out and join me for my annual mule deer hunt in early November.
I was 12 and I left for Easter vacation and I never came back. My headaches were getting so bad it was caused by the spinal fluid creating pressure since it could not flow. I actually do not have one brain tumor, but I have two put together.
We both have tags, but of course, Teddy's up first, and on private lands this well managed, it's only a matter of time before he gets a shot at one of the bucks that Utah is well known for. It was about a 10-minute drive to get to where Daniel wanted to start hunting, and it wasn't long after we got there that we spotted a buck that was worth a closer look in the spotting scope.
He's a pretty nice 3x4. He's got a double white throat patch. Nice looking buck. That's right. There. We can get a bigger one.
That's nice.
Not bad for the first couple minutes.
I do try.
Yeah.
We'll get you a better one than him.
It was a nice deer, but not a Teddy first day deer, so we moved on.
Pretty good luck back there, boss. First morning, first day.
Because we couldn't take Teddy on a long mountainous hike, our plan was to use the extensive road systems on the ranch and cruise and look over as many deer as possible, find a good buck, and plant a stalk. We were constantly spotting deer, and whenever we saw a more promising buck, we'd stop and put the spotting scope on him, and it wasn't long before we spotted a bona fide shooter.
It's 3:30. You think he'll come this way?
I think he will. It's 3:30. We just wait a little bit.
This buck was in a tight spot. He was way up on the hill, and there really wasn't a good approach. We drove up the draw and got to a spot a lot closer where we could take a look at the buck and plant a stalk.
He lifted. Oh, good Lord, look at that left side.
Look at the fork on him. That might be one we might want to look at, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Teddy and I walked up the trail about 100 yards to a spot where Daniel was filming the buck in his spotting scope. The iPhone let us all see the deer, and Daniel came up with a plan to get us within range. But it wouldn't be easy. This buck had a bunch of does, and from their vantage point, it would be easy to bust us and run over the top and out of sight. We worked our way slowly up the trail. And once we were within 200 yards, we started glassing and trying to locate the buck and get a shot. We could see the does along the skyline, but we couldn't spot the buck. Daniel thought he had gone just over the top and into the draw on the other side. And just as we were about to leave, a smaller buck stepped out. And just behind him, I could see the antlers of the larger deer. He had been there all along. We were close, so we got Teddy set up in the rifle using the spotting scope as a rest. Teddy is strong and he's steady. At only 125 yards, this buck just needed to take 6 or 7 steps and he would be broadsiding in the open for a shot. It was close, but as so often happens with big old bucks, he stayed under the cover of the oak brush and was able to slip right over the top of the ridge and out of sight without ever offering us a shot. We backtracked off that hill and we got around to the other side and glassed that basin, but we never saw that buck again. But it's a good thing that we're in Utah on one of the best private ranches, and another big buck is just around the corner. This segment of Steve's Outdoor Adventures has been sponsored by Burris Optics. Find what matters. This segment of Steve's Outdoor Adventures has been sponsored by Pendleton Ammunition. Loading bullets, one round at a time. After an eventful morning, we headed back to the main lodge where Daniel's got a long-range shooting course set up with a nice bench, and I wanted to take the time to let Teddy get even more familiar with the rifle. It's chambered in .308s, there's not a lot of recoil, and it's perfect for this hunt. This rifle is perfect for anyone to hunt with, but it's ideal for our youth hunters. And he was ringing steel with every shot, and I had ultimate confidence that he would make the shot count when it mattered most.
Nailed it. Money.
And this is a special gun that several kids have used to kill their elk, and I've even used it on some of my own hunts. And anyone who thinks that a .308 is too light for a big game caliber hasn't done their research. And the proof of this amazing caliber is in the freezers of hunters all across North America. This was to be the last hunt we would film with this gun. It was a first-generation Bergara custom rifle with the world-famous Bergara barrel built on a Remington 700 action. I topped the gun with a Burris rifle scope and a custom turret with clicks out to 600 yards. And the final touch was adding the suppressor. This little addition eliminated noise flinch and recoil while adding about 20 feet per second in velocity. Now the new rifle that will replace that one is a Bergara custom rifle with the new Bergara action and the Bergara barrel. We're gonna top this gun off with the Burris Veracity rifle scope, and of course we've added the Dead Air Sandman suppressor to it. It's an absolute tack driver, and it'll make its debut on the mountain this fall. After lunch, we headed out to hook up with one of the landowners in the CWMU where we're hunting. He had heard that Teddy was coming for a hunt, and he'd been watching a couple of big bucks on his ground. That morning, he'd called Daniel, and they had formulated a plan for the evening hunt. We drove over in 2 trucks and brought along Teddy's dad, Kyle, as well as Derek Fussell, the founder of Camo Dreams. Daniel was positive that we were going to get Teddy a big buck that evening, and we wanted to have everyone along to share in the experience with him.
Too much BS and not enough hunting. We have to get serious now.
We headed up the 2-track road in the UTVs, and it wasn't 5 minutes, and we were spotting deer everywhere. This country doesn't get hunted very hard, and the deer behavior shows it.
Bunch of deer out in the field already.
And it wasn't long before we spotted one of the 6 to 7-year-old bucks that the landowner was hoping Teddy would get a shot at. We were in a bad spot for an approach, so we used the old farmer's tactic and drove right past them with the hopes that they wouldn't spook and we could sneak back and get a shot. As it turns out, when we parked the UTVs, there was another old buck within rifle range. So we quickly tried to get Teddy set up for a shot. This buck was heavy and old.
He's walking right at us through the trees. Stop him.
Yeah, that sun's making it hard. It's him coming down the hill.
Right, coming at us down the hill. Okay, look with your eyes. See him right here in the bottom.
Yep.
This deer was on a mission. He came down off the hill, and Teddy didn't have a chance for a shot.
Can't see him.
And I could see that the buck was going to cross the 2-track road. We got set up again, hoping for a shot as he crossed the road. The buck didn't materialize, but a second big buck appeared on the hillside. And now we had a decision to make. Which buck? The answer would be whichever one gives us the best shot first. We moved up the road and into the aspen trees. It was thick cover with tight shooting lanes. And a game of cat and mouse had begun. There were now 2 good bucks in front of us and within 50 yards. And we had to find a way to get Teddy a shot. This segment of Steve's Outdoor Adventures has been sponsored by Bergara Rifles, a passion for precision, every barrel, every rifle. This segment of Steve's Outdoor Adventures has been sponsored by Marathon Seat Covers. We've got you covered. The aspen trees in front of us, there are at least 2 good shooter bucks. The first one being the old, big, heavy 4x4 that came off the hill. The other one is a big, wide, typical 4x4. And we think that we got a glimpse of a big 7.5-year-old 3x3 that's super heavy. And this is a buck that has achieved legendary status with the hunters on this property. It's a game of cat and mouse. We move up, they move over. And there is always a wall of thick aspen trees between us and the bucks. But we know that it's just a matter of time. As we moved toward the end of the aspen patch, it started to open up, and there were shooting lanes. And I remember thinking that this is where it was going to happen.
See the top one of those 2?
Daniel had the spot picked out. We waited. These deer weren't in a hurry, and there were 2 sure shooter bucks and another one that was close, all feeding their way up the hill. And all the while, Teddy was in the gun, watching the bucks through the scope and waiting for the perfect shot. The big 4x4 never did stop, and he was out of sight. But Blade, the big 3x3, stopped in the perfect spot. And Teddy didn't hesitate for a second.
Now shoot him. Hey! Boom, piled him. Nice shot.
Hey, good job.
Nice shot.
Hell yeah! First deer ever. I am so happy right now.
That buck piled up fast. The shot was perfect, and Teddy had taken his first mule deer.
Give everybody high fives, man.
Come on, everybody. Bring it in, you all help.
Good job. Right here, buddy.
Okay.
You get a hug, man. You get a hug.
Thanks, buddy. Nice job.
Thanks,
Congratulations.
everybody.
Yeah.
On trail camera.
Thank you for letting me shoot him.
No, it's a cool deer. It's one of my favorite. We named him Dagger a long time ago.
Dagger.
Dagger.
Just dagger straight.
Yep.
Dagger. this deer's an old buck. He's what, 6.5 years old or 7.5 years old?
Perfect. We reveled in the moment and then made the long uphill walk to the buck.
You can see him real good right here. See him right there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, bud.
Nice heavy buck. All right.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah? Remember slow, short
steady.
steps, okay?
On the other side of the deer.
Good thing.
You do that.
Oh, you guys do, Teddy?
Yeah, bud.
That is what we were talking about, Teddy. Look at the size of it.
So, well, how do you guys want to get him down?
Hey, look at him.
Good.
I'll get him down for you.
Yeah, you don't worry about that. You just
Check
enjoy the
him out.
moment, buddy.
God is good, God is great. Thank you, Lord, for everything you've given us and everything you haven't given us. Thank you for this beautiful shot that I have made and giving me the chance to do it. I'm sorry I have taken one of your animals from the land, but I will enjoy eating it. I'm almost certain everybody else will. But thank you, Lord, for everything you have ever given me and for supporting me in all of my life. Watch over us as we get this deer down and watch over us in the past and future. Amen.
Amen.
Good prayer.
You take comfort in their victories and celebrate in their success in achieving a camo dream come true. We sent for Teddy's dad and Derek Fussell, who had been waiting patiently for the gunshot, but didn't hear the suppressed rifle's report. Daniel drug the deer off the hill, and we walked Teddy through the process of cutting his first Utah deer tag and wrapping it on the antlers of his mature buck.
Put this piece back.
We loaded the big deer up in the back of the Ranger and headed off the mountain. The ultimate conclusion to an amazing day in the field. Teddy's hunt was done, and he had taken a deer that any hunter would be proud to shoot, and I would be lying if I didn't tell you that I was looking forward to my own hunt that would begin the next day. This segment of Steve's Outdoor Adventures has been sponsored by Pendleton Ammunition, loading bullets, one round at a time. This segment is sponsored by Adventure Armory, rifle, scope, and ammunition packages shipped, ready to shoot. With Teddy's hunt in the book, Daniel and I got up early the next morning and headed up the mountain. One of the other guides had actually seen a giant buck the evening before, and he had lined Daniel out on where he thought we could find him at first light.
We didn't find anything in this basin of interest, so we're gonna take the truck all the way up to the top of this hill and peek over into the basin on the other side. There's a big buck here somewhere. We just gotta glass him up, get on him. Get much better than that. With the mule deer rut just starting to come on strong in early November and a lot of does in the basin, we knew that a big mature buck had to be somewhere close by. So we started to drive up to the top of the knob to glass the other side, and wouldn't you know it, that big buck was standing about 80 yards off the road on the other side of some oak brush. I had to try and get a shot, and I thought that if I could just get to the fence line, I'd have a window through the brush. I just had to hope that the buck would stick around long enough for me to get that opportunity.
There he goes.
Dang, he busted out on us. It's a giant buck. We gotta get moving.
We kind of figured that they were gone and decided to drive up to the top and glass for them. And sure enough, that big buck broke away from the group and was all by himself in the center of the hillside, 250 yards below the road.
Hit him.
I haven't seen him come up though.
No, I'm keeping my eyes peeled. Nice shot. Nice shot.
Thanks, bud. Well, this morning kind of got off to a fast start.
Steve, you made an awesome shot, buddy. That's a good looking deer.
He's a handsome buck.
He's a good deer. Great deer. Beautiful deer.
So we headed down the hill to find him. Daniel spotted the first blood and his tracks as they headed down the hill.
Coming after Steve's buck.
We followed the blood trail, and after a short search, we found the buck piled into the oak brush.
Right there.
Oh God, I was looking up here on the hill.
Nice.
Rattlesnake, I'd be wearing a bite, man.
Look at that. He is tucked in that tree like no other. Man, what a pretty deer.
He is, he's gorgeous.
Beautiful deer. His face, his cape. I love big mule deer. They're so awesome. Big mature bucks. They're smart. Nothing better.
Hey, thanks again.
Good job. Nice shooting.
I gotta tell you, if you've never hunted or shot with a suppressed rifle, you're really missing out because it makes the gun more accurate, ballistically improves the gun, and my ears, they never rang once. It was just the perfect way to come up here on the mountain, take a great buck, didn't disturb any other wildlife, and I just feel privileged to have been able to come out here on this huge ranch in Utah, see all of these deer, hunt with my good friend Daniel, and take this awesome trophy mule deer buck. If you'd like to book this hunt for yourself, please give my office a call. We will take your calls, answer your questions, and help you book the hunting adventure of a lifetime. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this week's show, but please remember to join us again next week when we bring you another exciting episode of Steve's Outdoor Adventures.